Yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pakhuis de Zwijger on this Wednesday evening here in Amsterdam. My name is Dimfy, and I would like to welcome you all to a new episode of Fotokroniek. And before I'm going to explain what Fotokroniek is, I want to check the level of energy here in the audience because I had a really long day, but I'm still pretty hyped. And I wanted to check how you are doing today. So, on a scale to 1 to 10, being 10 the highest energy level you can be at, who is 4 or above? Okay, everyone. Oh, I see a little bit of doubt. 4. Okay, okay. 5 or above? Yeah, okay, still good, still with me. 6? Yeah, also 7? Okay, some people are now like quitting, lowering their hands. Where were we? 8? Still 8? Okay, okay. This corner is really active. 9? 9? I saw one hand over there. Did I see a hand? 9? Okay, nobody at 9 or 10. Also okay. For the 8s, I expect you to really, really give hard applauses tonight. Also to like motivate the rest. So Fotokroniek, I was telling you about this. This is a series that we've been running here at Pakhuis for a few years already. And at Fotokroniek, we always invite one photographer, sometimes more, to talk about their latest work, but also their growth and development as an artist, as a maker, and sometimes you can also drop a question about technical stuff. So if you have questions, you heard me right. Please raise your hand, but also at the end of this program, there's also going to be a lot of room to talk and ask questions. So for this edition, we're teaming up with FOAM again. We've done that previously, and then we invited artists like Jonatas de Andrade and Mous Lamrabat. That was last year. And this year we have a special guest as well. And that is Lebohang Kganye. But before we're going to introduce her, I would love to ask Daria Tuminas to the front. Daria, join me on the stage. And a warm welcome for Daria. Because Daria is working as a curator at FOAM, and you've been involved in, yeah, you can sit if you like. You've been involved in curating this exhibition that we're actually now going to talk about tonight. Can you tell me first a little bit about, because you didn't invite Lebohang for just a random reason. She actually won an important award, the Paul Huf Award 2022. Can you tell me first a little bit about that award? What is it for, and who has won previously?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for inviting me and giving the floor for a few first minutes. I just have to mention that I'm usually not affiliated with FOAM. I work on freelance basis, but I was kindly invited to guest curate this specific exhibition, so I'm very honored to do so. Regarding the Paul Huf Award, which is indeed, it's quite a large-scale award, very significant for photographers internationally.
Yeah, it's an annual international award, right?
Indeed, and it has been organized by FOAM since 2007, so it also has quite a long time span. And I think it's super important. There are many photographers and artists working with photography who aspire to get to be nominated and to get to be selected. As far as I'm concerned, there are about 100 to 120 nominations yearly, so there is quite a harsh selection. And out of this 100 or 120 people, then one is selected.
Yeah.
So
and it's open to documentary, journalistic, fashion, artistic photography, so it's pretty broad.
Yes, indeed, it is actually pretty broad in that sense, and it's up to also nominators, internal nominators, professionals in the photographic field internationally to introduce artists who they think are on the forefront of the photographic medium, or sometimes mixing photographic medium with others. I think we'll maybe talk about it later. You will talk later about it with Lebohang.
How are by who and how are nominees judged?
Yes, good question. So usually there is a new jury every year, and it consists of 5 professionals from the field. It's also, as the award by nature is international, so the jury is 2. And the last year in 2022, it comprised of Alona Barde, who is the curator at Barbican Art Gallery in the United Kingdom, who was chairing the jury, Anna-Kaisa Rastenberger, who is the chief curator at the Finnish Museum of Photography and also artistic director and co-founder of the Festival of Political Photography in Finland. Dimit Denker, who is the manager of photography department's collection at Istanbul Modern in Turkey. Then Aloremia Nabanya, who is the associate curator at Museum of Modern Arts, MoMA in New York. And last but not least, Oscar Munoz, who was the artist also in the jury. I think it's quite important to
also a maker perspective.
To have a maker's perspective, indeed, because then you know some things from inside. And
so international jury, also international renowned. The winner of this year. Let's introduce her a little bit, because what sparked the interest of the judges with this particular work and artist?
So Lebohang Kganye, she's here tonight, and I think she will speak at length about her work, but in terms of the jury, I think what fascinated jury is the same that fascinated me and fascinates me as a curator or as a mediator, is the actually multi-layeredness of the work. There's so much going on, and there are super important stories. And there's a very important research that is the basis of the work, and it is the research and the stories about apartheid, colonialism, and aftermath of those, and the impact of those on the family structures, on micro-histories and narratives of families, but also on larger larger historical clusters. So in terms of stories and research, it's very in-depth, very relevant, very important and fascinating, but also then on the level of working with medium, or I would rather say media in Lebohang's case, it is very versatile practice, and you can encounter anything from, photography to also video work, to animation, to installations.
And it's mixed media, mixed materials.
Often, yes, or even in the latest case with actually the new project that I think Lebohang will see first hanging tomorrow. We just talked about it. She will see it first hanging here at FOAM, and that's patchwork. So that's also something yet another
textile,
presence.
You talked about tomorrow. Before we go to tomorrow, was there already anyone pretty familiar with Lebohang's work? Okay, so new stories, some of you know, okay. Tomorrow is the opening of a brand new exhibition at FOAM that consists of multiple works of Lebohang. What can we expect?
Yes, we can expect a solo exhibition with 4 projects, and they bring you a little bit on a journey through different approaches and also media that Lebohang has been working in the last decade. So they also kind of span a period of about 10 years from the work Kalifalaka, her story made in 2013 to the newest work made just now into the 2022, or that is still also in the process. So I guess that.
Yeah, the diversity of work.
Yes.
Tomorrow is the opening.
Yes.
But the works are on display for a longer period. And maybe also already nice to mention, because I know you sat down in a chair, and on that chair was a little card. And the exhibition, we can visit it until, you know the date.
The 18th of May.
The 18th of May. And the nice thing is, with that card, you can bring one person for free. So you get 2 tickets for the price of 1. So yeah, we invite you all to visit this exhibition. What are you looking forward to the most from now on? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow, well, it's an amazing day, because it starts with tours, also internal tours for educators, for people at FOAM, etc., to so we gradually step into the storytelling format. All the works are hanging, all the works are set up then, and we keep on. Actually, we start, and mostly Lebohang starts to tell the story about the works. I think it's a super special moment, because it's a moment of sharing, of inspiration, of discovering new things for the audience, but also I hope for us as well, from the response, from the feedback, from the questions. So that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Tomorrow, special moment, but also on Saturday, because then Lebohang gives an artist tour through the museum or through the exhibition, and people can still sign up for that one, right?
Yes, absolutely. On the website of FOAM, you can find the tour on Saturday at 11 o'clock. So it's just for quite a limited number of visitors. So if you want to have one-on-one almost time with a small group and Lebohang and walk through the exhibition together, you're very welcome to sign up.
Thank you for now, Daria Tuminos.
Thank you.
Yes, and that's when we get to the point that I'm going to ask Lebohang to visit the stage. So I would like to hear those 8s. Give a warm welcome. Also the 4s I want to hear. Lebohang Kganye. Lebohang, welcome.
Thank you.
What number are you today?
I think I'm sitting at 6.
A 6? Okay. I'm going to ask you again at the end of this talk. I hope it didn't degrade to a 4, but then we got an 8 from you. Before I go to you, and I'm probably going to ask you the same questions, we always like to know who we have in the audience, so that you also know who is listening to your stories. Because if you are who identifies as a storyteller here? Because I know you do. Okay, some storytellers in the back. Okay, an artist? Some artists, okay. Who's a photographer? Okay. Who is a video maker? Video? Making exhibitions? Okay. Who didn't fall into one of those categories, but also identifies as a visual visual maker? Visual maker? Okay, what did I miss? I'll join you. Wait. What are you making?
Photography.
Oh, photography. Okay, I did mention that. Anyone else not falling into categories? Here, over here. Hi. What did I miss?
Fashion stylist.
Ooh, fashion. Also visual. Yes. And here.
Also fashion.
Fashion.
Okay.
Also nice. You also have something with fashion. We can get to that later. Okay, great. Storyteller. And I think you fall in all of those categories that we just mentioned. But what if I ask you to introduce yourself without mentioning your work or what you make? How would you introduce yourself?
Jeez, that's a tough one. So I am Lebohang Kganye. I come from South Africa. I'm a storyteller. I love stories. I love hearing our stories evolve. I love hearing how things came to be. My country is important to me. The history of my country is important to me. Understanding my identity as a young Black South African woman through stories from an older generation is really what has shaped my practice.
Yeah, that's great. Maybe we can also go back to that basis that you got, what you just said, like shape your practice. You grew up in Katlehong, which is southeast of Johannesburg. Can you tell a little bit about that part of South Africa and how your childhood looked like there?
I mean, so townships within the South African context or South African landscape have it's a really difficult history because they were made and designed to as a point of segregation. And so how the place was designed was really designed for Black people. And so it was designed as a place for it to be on the peripheries of the city. And so thinking around specifically the East Rand or the East Rand and the South, which are relatively close to the mines. So South Africa also has a history of mining, which I believe you might see, if I stand to be corrected, which I believe you might see in the exhibition that's happening on the upper level at the FOAM Museum, which is by Ernest Cole. And I mean, a lot of photographers from the older generation of photographers, I think their work speaks a lot around the history of apartheid and documents that. But also labor and as I'm speaking about Ernest Cole, I'm also thinking around someone like Sandu Mofokeng who documented one of his series around the trains and the churches on trains, because of how far the townships were, and so people had to commute for hours to get to work and from work. And so they spend a lot of time at work and commuting and not really having lives, I think, outside of that. And so there were churches that, so people would literally be like in a church sermon on their way to work. So it became, so that the train had became like its own community as well. So, but also it really speaks about how Black people were put on the sides and in the peripheries. And so Katlehong was one of those townships as well. So, so I grew up in that context. So I grew up sort of post-apartheid.
Yeah, it was in the 90s?
It was in the 90s, so post-apartheid, but really still, I think, especially around the 90s or early 90s. And in Katlehong, specifically close to us, which was Thokoza, there were a lot of infightings, and so it was a really difficult time, I think, around that time. But I mean, I was a child, but I remember stories of that. But I generally was in Katlehong, but my life was to a large degree outside of that because of school. And because at the time when I started going to school, it's when there was sort of the introduction of multiracial schools. And so I became sort of the first generation of children that were going to these schools that were also far away from the townships and then commuting back home. So I got to experience, I think, another world, sort of post-apartheid and be with in multiracials, I think. So that's my history.
The stories of your youth are still shining through in the work that you're making today. When was the first time you came in touch with probably you didn't know it was storytelling, but it was more this urge to create or make? Because I know you've been writing, for example, from an early age.
I mean, I really loved poetry. I really loved African literature, and so I actually wanted to be a writer. So I thought I'd study journalism. So after school, because I loved writing, but I didn't know. My fascination was definitely African literature, but I didn't know you could study it or like study to like philosophy or critical studies, whatever. So I thought that the only way to become a writer was to study journalism. And so I'd applied to study journalism, but I didn't get into journalism school. They rejected my application. And funny enough, so maybe 3 months prior to that, as I was doing my final year in high school, in preparing for like an English exam, my teacher gave me this paper which was titled "The Life and Death of Photojournalist Kevin Carter." And so this was the first time I'd heard the term photojournalism. And so, and also just sort of reading about the Bang Bang Club and
connecting it to a visual language.
Exactly. But I really didn't. So I came back home. I said to my mom, so I was 18. I said to my mom, oh, when I study journalism next year, when I major, I'm going to major in photojournalism, right? And I said that with knowing nothing really about like that world. But it just sounded so fancy. And so then when my application got rejected for journalism, my mom had spoken to a colleague who then told her about the school market photo workshop. And they had like a course. One of the courses was photojournalism. And as you know, Market Photo Workshop was founded by late photographer David Goldblatt. And so I was not keen when she came back and she was like, no, there's the school. I was like, no, I want to go to university. Like I was quite set on what I wanted to do. And she convinced me to go look at the space and I went and I fell in love.
Yeah, because what was it that made you fall in love with?
I mean,
was it the institute or was it also the medium of photography? I mean, which you didn't know a lot about back then?
I mean, I'd never held a camera, I think, before that point. So I arrived at the school. They sort of took me around, and I went into the dark room. I was like, wow, like I'd never, it was just such a new world. The energy of the space was, I think, also what I fell in love with. But it was really meant to just be like a stopgap. It was meant to just be like a sort of gap year where I still find something to do.
Yeah, I might as well take some photos to come with my articles.
So it was really meant to be that because I think also coming from the township, wanting to really not become a statistic, have a very different life. I knew what a jump it would be also for me to go to university and to get like a degree. And so that was important to me. And so I think that's why I was not keen on like doing anything sort of informal. So anyway, so I get there and I fall in love and, but it was still meant to be just 1 year. And, I fell in love. So I held a camera for the first time. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, there were... and I think that maybe also that's why I'm not comfortable with calling myself a photographer. I think I sort of knew I wasn't a photographer, but the space also allowed for me to think about images and to think about stories and really just do anything. Yeah, so I mean, the space, I think even when you think about the sort of photographers and people that come from there, like your Zanele Mholi, Sabelo Mlangeni, Musa Ngumalo, a lot of my generation of photographers that come from that space, I mean, the space was really made to be a space that's around giving access to sort of underprivileged people that would not have access to telling their own story, but also it was about giving access to those people to document what was happening sort of during apartheid and post-apartheid, but it really was about that. So it was about social documentary photography and photojournalism. So I mean, I think with my generation of photographers, because that time had really passed.
Yeah, it's almost about democratizing the the art.
Exactly. But also, I think, because so much important work had been done by the older photographers around documenting South Africa and its history and, the history of oppression and what, everything that was happening, that for us, it was about sort of an identity. What is our identity sort of outside of apartheid and sort of post-apartheid? And a lot of the photographers that I'm also mentioning, like Zanele Mholi, who then documented their communities, who then documented themselves, sort of thinking through this idea of like post-apartheid identity. And so that's sort of really what happened for me. So I decided to not do journalism. I just continued on because I was able to bring my love for writing and storytelling and I would say investigating, because my work very much is about the research and oral histories, and so all of that comes through.
Because I read that for some works you do really extensive research and interviewing people and everything. I think it's also nice that we're going to show some of your works later on, and then probably people will understand also more how much of that, all those different skills you put into these works. History, present, and also futurism plays a big part in your works. We now tackled a little bit of the history of you also. Maybe we see, what do we see in the back right now? Can you share a little bit about this? Because this is one of the earlier works, right? 2013, that was kind of that period. There were some works, and you're still actually, I see still a lot of articles and interviews being published about this work, although it's already 10 years old. Can you bring us back a little bit to the beginning of when your artistic career took off?
So this is from a work that I did between 2012 and 2013, called Kilefalaka, which means it's my history or heritage, but it's basically about sort of this idea of leaving something behind. And so this was a work that I did. I think I did about 3 years after my mother had passed on, and I started the work really not even thinking about creating a body of work, going through the family photo albums,
or even showcasing it all around the world.
Yes,
that was not the intention back then.
That was not the intention. I think that that it was really at a point when I was maybe ready to sort of deal with her loss. And so the work happens 3 years, or I start working on it 3 years, and I'm really just looking at the family photo albums and realizing that all of the clothes that she was wearing when she was around the same age that I was when I started this work, which was in her 20s, that a lot of those clothes were still in her wardrobe. And so, I think, as you can see even in this image, the exact earring that she's wearing there is the one that I wore for this photo. And that's me when I was 1 year old. So this is like...
Yeah, because what you did is you photographed yourself in her outfits, and even to the detail of the earring. And bringing those images together.
Yes.
So bringing her to the present.
So I mean, so a lot of the photos were taken in my grandmother's yard, and so I went to the exact locations where she'd been photographed and wore the same clothes, and I was with my sister, and she, so she would have the original photo of my mom, and she'd be the one like behind the lens, and so it was also like about our journey, I think, together, of not speaking about the loss, but because I think half the time you don't have a vocabulary to speak about what you're feeling or experiencing. And so the work, I think, was very much about that journey of healing, but also about this idea of what an archive is as well. I think I started to think about, the things that you leave behind and what they can mean. So that's what the work is about.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful what you said. It's about healing. I also see celebration. and bringing memories to life. And you can also see that in the work that follows, because you did a follow-up on this project, also using your personal history as a way to tell, well, also a new story. I think we also have pictures of that next project. Yeah, that's this one. Because this was the first time where you started using, because these are cutouts. How, well, maybe first tell what the project was about.
So this work happened at the same time with the previous work. So this was 2012, 2013. And I mean, you know, with this work, I was intending on making a body of work. So this was also at a time when I was looking through the family photo albums, and then I started to ask my grandmother about our family history, but specifically our family name. So Kganye, which is my family name or surname, means light. And so, you know, and so it's spelled in like these 3 or 4 different ways. And so I started to go on this journey of, you know, also because language is quite an important part.
Yeah, you were following the roots of the name, right?
The family name, yes. But also to be able to also think around light in relation to photography, which is the medium that I'm using, and thinking about, you know, when I started studying photography, I did always define it as drawing with light. And so this, you know, this idea of like shadow play and playing with light, which you'll see tomorrow in the exhibition, is something that I play with quite a bit, and it's something that's become something consistent within the work. So this work happened at a time when I was working on a television production. So I worked on the television production on set for about 2 years after my studies. And I was quite fascinated with set design there. And, you know, and so I spent a lot of time with the set designers. And so I started to use that vocabulary in my work. And so the work is about the story of my family moving to the city. And it became about my grandfather because everyone was talking about my grandfather when I was
he's
doing
the
this
leading
research.
character in this series,
Yes.
right? Because for who doesn't see it really clearly, these are like life-size sets.
Cutouts.
And you are also in it.
Yes. So I mean, so the work was happening at the same time as the work we saw before. So this becomes a series about my grandfather. So I had never met him, so he'd passed away before I was born. And so in doing this research, so traveling around South Africa, engaging with family members about our family history, everyone was talking about my grandfather because they all lived in his house at some point, which is where I grew up. So it was the first house in the city. So he refused to stay in the farm, so he moved to the city, and so everyone lived in his house at some point, and so I basically, because I only had photos of him, and in the photos he was always wearing a suit in the few photos that we had of him, and so I found a suit similar to the one that he was wearing in his photos, and basically reimagined or reenacted these stories that my family was telling me. And then using a lot of the family photos, or sometimes asking my family members, like my aunts, to pose. So, you know, I'd basically just draw out a scene and say, okay, you need to stand in this way and open your hands. And then now I need to go photograph buildings. Now I need to go photograph. So basically just recreate the story that my family told me.
Yeah.
So it becomes like a play, like a theater piece.
Yeah. And there you see already the multi-layeredness of your storytelling, but also the kind of mediums that you are using, because this is always a mix between its performance, its set design, its photography is still in there. These 2 projects formed the foundation of the rest of your work, because you can still see some resemblance in current works related to these. What would you see as the the storyline between all of your works? What are the similarities between all of the things that you're creating?
I mean, I do think that that I've always not believed in like one story, and so I think that what I perhaps have always tried to challenge is so, for example, with the earlier work about my mother, so she works as a factory worker since she was in her 20s, but there isn't a single photo of her in like her uniform, and she wore a uniform since she was in her 20s up until she passed away. And so all of the photos that sort of represent her, she's very glamorous, like in these photos.
So they're more like staged images.
So they're staged images. And so for me, this idea of like what, like the family photo album, and it becoming, and I mean, that sort of comes through, especially in the sort of later works, the more I think about the family photo album and what it sort of stands for. This idea of like this family book that you put together to, to sort of represent your family story. But that isn't really the case, because it's almost like so I compare that very much like children's books, and like this idea of like characters that as a child you'd be like, I'm this character, I'm Cinderella, I'm whoever. And so I think about the family photo album, I think also in that way, as like this family book that has also been constructed in a very particular way half the time by mothers.
Yeah, and we still do that with our own Instagram pages, right? Yeah.
But also there's like so it becomes like this narrative of a family, but it's actually the fantasy of like a story of a family. And so from thinking about the clothes, from thinking also, my family never had a camera, so they'd also have to wait or call like a street photographer to come and have their portraits taken. So so it's also why there was also that performance element, but also they were dictating how they wanted to be remembered and how they wanted to be represented. And so for me, I think the family photo album is something that is present in a lot of the work, but also really the questions of photography and performance. So the idea of like memory and fantasy, and like this idea of like sort of oral histories and photography. So that I think is really, those are the sort of common threads in the work. So even with the later work that is moving away from the family narrative, it's still those themes of memory and performance, but also, sort of history and fantasy, and history and storytelling, microhistory, macro histories. So that is present, I think, even in the later works that are not about my family history or family story.
Yeah. We get back to the later work, the more recent work later on. With Kilafalaka, you are already seeing your transition to the more performance, theatrical, working with more perspective, literally. But you also transferred to using moving image at a certain point. How did that got into your work, and how did your artistic process develop throughout the years?
So the first film or first animation actually was a commission, which I mean, I was excited about the money, but
yeah, because it was based on one of your earlier works,
right? It was based
on
one of my earlier works. But I was like, I'd love to do it, but I'd love to do it because it sounds like a great idea. Technically, it sounds like great money, but I can't do it because I'm not a filmmaker.
Because there was a question from UK, from the British Council,
yes,
right?
Okay. And I think also because it was about Mandela Day, I was very keen on doing it. But so I was like, I don't think there's a way that I can pull it off. And so and they were really convincing in terms of the sort of support I would receive for making the film. And I think I'm forever grateful, I think, for them sort of pushing that hard for me to make the film.
Also pushing you a little bit out of the comfort, not too much, but a little bit out of that comfort zone. Yeah,
exactly. Because I think, I mean, from that point, I think now we're making the 5th film, not with the British Council, but in terms of me and my studio. And I'm really grateful that I started to think about my work in that way. And so even I think my film language has also evolved, I think, over the years in ways that I never would have imagined, I think, from the first film. So
yeah, in what way can you see that development?
I mean, they're definitely more ambitious, less static. I think also I'm collaborating more and more with studios, film studios, script writers.
Yeah, so including more disciplines to the process.
Yeah. But it's definitely, I think, I mean, the film that you'll see at FOAM, Shadows of Memory, it's the second time. So I worked on it maybe 2 years before COVID. And I was really not happy with it. So I showed it once and I pulled it back. And so, during COVID, we sort of got to rework it. And I'm so excited, I think, about what we managed to achieve with the film. And so we're showing it for the second time. So I showed it once last year, and this is the second time that it's being shown. And I'm really happy that it's being shown in this context.
Yeah. We're actually going to watch a piece that you brought today, video. Would you like to introduce it?
So the work is titled Shadows of Memory, and it's one of the works that was inspired by Ethel Fugard's work, which is so he's a playwright. And so I started to think more and more about this idea of performance, basically. So thinking about performance within the theater space. So I started to. It started as a commission, the photographic work. So I went to the Karoo, which is in the Northern Cape of South Africa, which is where he based a lot of the books that he wrote, or a lot of his scripts and plays about. And so
he's a writer.
I went there and spent time in the exact same sort of location. And I was reading his scripts and started to imagine the work. And so the work is very much sort of based on me imagining his scripts and then creating a work that is speaking to theater, but like visualizing it with my sort of, my sort of language with these cardboard cutouts. And so that's what the film is about.
You already mentioned before, like literature has a big influence on your work. What fascinated you that much in this particular work that made you decide, like, I want to base a whole work? And you actually dedicated a lot of time on this project. I really want to make a work based on these stories.
I mean, I think he worked in a way that I also found quite intriguing in thinking about how I work. So him spending time in the Karoo, him engaging with the people from the Karoo. I mean, he's not from there. Really made me think about how I also do my research projects. So for me, also traveling around South Africa and engaging with, I think previously I'd always been doing it with my family. So the earlier work allowed me to meet family members sometimes that I'd never met before. And so I traveled around South Africa trying to locate my family and having these conversations around my family history.
Yeah, it always gave you an excuse to take a deep dive in those oral stories that are often, I mean, they're shared at family parties, but sometimes you want to go deeper, right?
Yes, but also I think it was beyond that. It was also about trying to also meeting family that I'd never met before. And so that journey also was about me understanding sort of my place, but also the idea of like language. Because, obviously in traveling, so in South Africa, we have 11 official languages. And so the family name also, and the evolution of the family name has also a lot to do with sometimes it being wrongly documented.
Yeah, it's more
by
bureaucratic
officials.
flaw. Yeah.
Yeah, but also sometimes it had a lot to do with forced removal. So it is very much connected to that history. And so and then that speaks again to sort of language. And within the South African context, there's something called izithakazelo or direto, which are clan praises, or like each family name, each Black family name or surname has its praise poem, which is basically like this song or this poem that is about the evolution of the family name, or the family history and the lineage. And also this is also how Black families were documenting their history. Because, obviously a lot of them were also denied education and, and all of that. And so oral history and song was quite
I was just
important.
Saying, poems, music. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was quite important in terms of them documenting their history. And so this journey of me traveling through the country, or through finding my family in the country, it also, they were reciting this poem as they've been told it, or how they recite it. It's obviously different from person to person, and that's also this idea of like history as something that's also fluid, but also oral history as a real history. And so Ethel Fugard's way of working was just, I think I found it quite similar. I think how he did his research and how he went into the communities and spent a lot of time and engaged in conversation and just observed and imagined or reimagined. Because, for example, this film Still Here is about one of the stories that he wrote. I think it's called The Train Driver, and so he had read an article about this woman that had jumped off a train with her children. I mean, so not jumped off, but jumped in front of, and that had a lot to do with the fact that she felt so poor, like she felt like she could not be able to take care of her children, but who is she leaving them behind for? Mm-hmm. And so he then he read this article, and then he started to write this book, which is about this train driver. So he's basically questioning. So the train driver who, this imaginary train driver who was the one that was in the train and couldn't stop the train to avoid that situation. And so it's also asking this idea of like responsibility. It's also asking around sort of social issues, economical issues, who's responsible. And so for me, I found that how he's asking these questions around the state of the country, and politics and all of that through his work, and all of these different sides I really connected to.
Yeah, by using these stories, and you can see so many things in there, right? Depending on who reads it. Mm-hmm. Let's watch the movie. I have many more questions prepared, but I would love to give you also the opportunity to ask a question or to maybe add something to the conversation or reflect on the work. Is there anyone who has a question? Yes. Hi there. Coming from the fashion perspective. Hello there. What is your name and what is your question?
My name is Ona, and you mentioned your post identity after apartheid, and I was wondering what that means.
I think I'm still asking that question myself. I think a lot of photographers from my generation in the South African context are doing a lot of work that are about identity, and so I think that that the question of identity, I think and it's difficult to also realize that you are always using the term apartheid, sort of in a period that's called post-apartheid, but I think it has a lot to do with how a lot of things, I think for our generation, we feel like they've not been corrected. I think, for example, I was just speaking to someone the other day, yesterday actually. They were saying, so they asked me where I'm from, since I'm here in the Netherlands. Then I said I'm from South Africa. So they're like, oh, so you are part Dutch. And I mean, I don't know what to say, and I was like, I don't know how to respond. They're like, no, because you sort of partly hear the Dutch language because of Afrikaans, and I think that the questions around language and sort of. As I said, going to like a multiracial school, as in like 1995, and being forced to learn Afrikaans as a second language when you have 11 official languages, and not learning, my home language, which is Sesotho, or one of the widely spoken language, which is isiZulu. And also because of the history of, why people are being forced to learn Afrikaans. It's always such a difficult thing, I think, to sort of engage with. And so I think that the questions of identity, and, sort of defining myself as sort of the post-apartheid or the sort of bone-free generation, as what we've been called, has a lot to do, I think, with really the state of the country. And so you can't really speak without really thinking about how so many things have not been corrected post-apartheid.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Another question. Yes. Hi. I'm also going to sit next to you. Hi, what is your name and what is your question?
Hi, my name is Lynn Moore, and I was quite interested to see that you have quite a few cows in your images.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about the significance of the cows?
So it was one of the stories as well from a family member, and we were actually speaking about that with Maria, who's an artist friend of mine who's here today. We're speaking about marriage and how and the process of like dowry, and in South Africa it's called lobola. And how, they'd ask for your hand in marriage, and they'd have to send cows to you. So your family would determine how many cows you are worth, and then your husband's family would bring the cows to your side of the family. And then once the cows have been handed over, then you can leave to go the other side. And so that was one of the stories that my aunt was telling me, that they married her with, I think she said 15 or 17 cows, and she was so proud. She was like, when we opened up the gates and the cows came in the yard, so she was like narrating the story with so much pride. And so that scene is basically about that story and the history of that history of farming, but specifically I think looking at it through my aunt's story.
Oh, well noted. Another question. here. Yes. Hi. What is your name and your question?
My name is Sevilla Maria, and I have a question about the way you start your works. How do you explain to yourself or your team what you want to create? What is your way of working?
Yeah, maybe a good introduction because you're now working with a whole studio and a team of people. Can you maybe first, before answering that question, explain a little bit how big the team is you're working with?
So I mean, in terms of the core team at the moment, it's 4 people. But that's really them supporting administration, it's supporting sometimes production, but each body of work sort of requires something different. So for example, this new series, Mosebetsi wa Diriti, which I'm showing for the second time, currently it's showing at FOAM. And so these are they're not even life size, so they're not human scale. They're quite large, so they fill up the space. And these are fabric works, and so I'd been thinking about this work, I think, for quite a long time. And so every work sort of demands, or every idea demands, for me, it demands a medium that I think sort of best communicates or executes or allows me to execute the idea, I think, in sort of what it demands. And so I think the beauty of not feeling so tied to photography is that I can really shift between mediums. And so, for example, I worked with 3 seamstresses, so 3 main ones, but then there's also others that sort of support the sewing process. And it's literally pieces of fabric this small, and sort of all these different gray tones, so gray, so all of these different gray tones that are then sewn together to create a photographic image. And it's about sort of the so deconstructing the image and deconstructing the narrative, but again, working with the family archive and thinking through the family archive, but also this idea of, so thinking about the earlier work around my mother. And, that work was about who becomes the ghost when someone passes away. And so that's why the image is sort of the double. So I'm in a lot of the images, I'm actually sort of the shadow image. And so it becomes about the fact that when someone passes away, there's like a double loss. And because you lose who you are as you're trying to sort of hold on to this person as well. That might be my phone. Maria, can you please switch off my alarm?
She can't answer right now. She can't.
Time alarm.
Later on, unless it's really, really important, then we do.
And so the work continues this idea of like photography and spirituality. And so, thank you. And so what Maria was also saying earlier is that how the work also has like the sort of spirituality, because the fabric was also, it moves as people walk in the space. So it has this ephemeralness where it feels like it's like the spirit that's like hovering in the space because it is around sort of the ancestors. So, sort of also thinking around photography and the history of photography linked to sort of spirituality and taking someone's spirit or capturing someone's spirit or essence.
Yeah. By the way, Maria was just mentioned, your friend, fellow photographer or fellow storyteller, and accompanying you on this trip. But back to Sabalai's question, because the artistic vision, how can you align the whole team around that one?
It's always difficult. I mean, so for the film works, I mean, sometimes it really doesn't work out. As I said that when we did Shadows of Rememory we did it in 2007. We did it in 2019, I think. And it was such a flop. That film was, it just wasn't feeling right. And so we shown it for the first time because, we'd sort of committed it for an exhibition. And I sort of pulled it back and returned to it, I think, when I felt like I'd found a team that was really able to assist me in terms of really realizing it, I think.
Because what was it missing, according to you? What was it lacking?
It just didn't have heart. I don't know how to put it. It was such a technically it was there, but it just didn't feel right. And so I think also even when you so even with Msebenzi wa Diriti, these fabric works, we started working on them sort of COVID time. So 2020, we started with the sampling process using many different materials. Then we tried beads because I knew it had to be not fabric, but I knew it had to be material. But so we tried so many different materials before eventually finding the right format. And then at some point you had to try and find the right sort of colors, then the right scale. So it went through all of those different sort of sampling phases and finding the right sort of seamstress that was supporting that process. And so all of the works, I think, go through. And then the others like Gilefalaga just, it happened. So it was such an organic work that I think I always say that for me it's one of the most honest work because it wanted to happen, and it just really happened, I think, without much effort and many sort of different stages. Whereas I think and it's of all my works, it's the most photographic work. And I think all the other works have really demanded many different things, and this work was just
Yeah. And you were able to do this on your own.
Yes.
Yeah. And now the works get bigger, more technical, more complex. So it's not only about the skill, but also finding the people
right
that
people.
feel the heart.
Yeah.
Right. So skip artistic vision, it's hard. I saw a question here. Hi. Kom even naast jullie zitten. Ja. Hello. What is your question and what is your name? Maybe first.
My name's Philippa Edwards. My question is, how do your family respond to your work? And has it unlocked other stories as your process has developed over the years?
I think it's been quite a funny journey with the family, in the sense that when I started, none of them knew what I was doing. They were sort of, what can I say, happy to have a bit of spotlight and all this attention, that I was giving them. And I think at some point they got bored. So it's like, because, for example, with my grandmother, when we started, she was keen on telling the stories. Then for her, it was like, aren't you going to stop? Like, okay, now I'm over it. And so it's gone through many different stages, I think, with them. But also for me, it's been interesting also seeing how a story evolves. So now it's no longer what she said yesterday. The following day it's like something quite different. So she's also almost making it more fantastical. And so I started also being interested in this idea of like the performance in telling a story, almost similar to this idea of how the family name, the clan names or the praise song is performed, because it is a performance, because it also speaks about the totems and animals and this and this. And so I started to see how, even sometimes with the family members, they were telling these stories in like ways that were suspicious. But having the exhibitions in South Africa, because I really have the exhibitions in South Africa, or have exhibitions in South Africa, is always really special, because then the family gets to see the work, not just see it sort of digitally as I show it to them, but really see it within that context, and hear people engage with the work, hear me speak about the work, hear me tell their stories, and really engage. So that, I think, has been the best part of making the work. I think the conversations that it's allowed that I would have otherwise not had with my family.
Yeah. Beautiful. Another question. Yeah, in the front. Hi, what is your name and what is your question?
So my name is Jeanne, and I wanted to ask you about the importance of fabrics or textile in your approach and your work. because in Kele Faraka, I get the feeling that you are connecting with your mom on some kind of intimate level by wearing her former clothes, but maybe in more recent works, there's like a shift in your in the way you use fabric. And just wanted to ask you, would you say that the creation of fabric kind of mirrors the creation of stories?
Oh, well spotted.
I think you made that connection, which I'll use.
Now it is. Now it is.
I mean, I think, so thinking about this idea of also the passing on of clothes, because I'd never really thought about that. So, so I think now I have a bit more difficult with like going to vintage stores because I think because of making the work Gilefalaka, because I'd never really thought about this idea of like someone leaving their clothes behind and what that means, and sort of the spirit of a person, and how her clothes now sort of almost represent her in the same way that her photographs represent her, and especially because of how a lot of the clothes that she was wearing in the photos are still in her wardrobe, and so I've also struggled to let go of those clothes. I think because of that connection, or really, I think the more I started to think about that, and so I don't know. I think also I couldn't understand how I moved to the patchworks or the fabric works. And maybe it's connected to that. So I'd not, because it's really recent work. I think that there's still many things I'm thinking through about the work. I mean, I still even struggle to write about Musebetsi Wadiriti, which Daria can speak about. I think because it's still not something that I've been able to connect. I think outside of the story itself, I've not really been able to connect why I sort of moved to the patchworks. I think with the sort of cardboard cutouts, or the sets and the film works, the connection, like, it makes sense, but I think the fabric works, I've still not made, I think, those connections. So,
well, maybe if we ask you back in 10 years, then your story evolved in this whole theory. And I think that is also the beautiful thing that's happening, right? Because people are looking at your work and they are also gathering thoughts about it themselves. I mean, it must be really exciting as an artist also to like release your work and send it off to the world. I can imagine that because of the context, your work resonates a lot back home in South Africa. Mm-hmm. But your work actually all over the world, how do you say, like, causes feelings in people. A lot of people are resonating with it. What do you think is it that we worldwide could recognize in your work? What is appealing to them the most?
I mean, I think that's a really difficult question.
Yeah, I should ask the audience, actually, but
maybe. But
I can also imagine you have an idea.
I mean, I think with Gilefalaga, I don't know. I think it's the sort of vulnerability, I think, that also maybe the work is around, that maybe allows for people to connect with. The conversation around loss, which we all have sort of gone through in different ways. Love. I don't know. I think.
Well, maybe we can ask. What are some of the words or emotions that, when seeing some of the work, well, you definitely have to go and check it out at FOAM, obviously. But seeing it here on the screen, what are some of the words or emotions that pop up in your mind? You can just yell it and I can repeat it for the recording. It's universal. Universal feelings, yeah. Wait, well, that was too many words to repeat. Wait, I'll come to you.
Sorry. I think everybody's moved by this work because it's universal. I mean, the loss of a mom, everybody is going to be impacted by that at some point. So it resonates with everyone, I guess.
Yeah. So even if you don't put it in the political and social context of when the work was made, there's still so many things that are part of your work. Yeah. Another one? Oh, here.
for me personally, and I could imagine for more people, being European and black, you're making me wonder, like, okay, so you got to find, you have like something you can follow, like your roots. And it's making me think, like, if I would follow it, then where would I end? And we're both black. I'm sure it's going to Africa, but then where? So it's just, but my family looks like yours. So it's just like you're bringing me into my own history, into my own family, into my own identity. So, yes.
Yeah, we're also still healing right here in the Netherlands, right? Yeah. Another emotion? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Memories, it was mentioned earlier, family photos. We've all got photos like this in our family, only not with ourselves superimposed on them.
Yeah. Are you going to look at them different now?
Oh, my dad's got loads of photos. We've got family albums every year. I mean, we don't stick them in albums because they're all digital. But when we go home, my kids look at them and we just laugh. They laugh at us as little girls, and they're all there. And that's very evocative in your work.
Yeah, you should take them serious. You can build a whole career on it. Another emotion. Somewhere here from this row. Silence. That's also sometimes a good one. Just like no words. Yeah. Oh, here's a. Yeah, please do. What is your name and what is your question or reaction?
Well, the reaction, it's to the movies we just saw, or the movie that parts of the movie we just saw. And for me, it's chicken skin. So it's really getting sucked into your storytelling qualities.
Yeah, goosebumps.
Goosebumps. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a literal Dutch translation. I'm not sure if that was understandable. Yeah. No.
So you're I know what I'm talking about. So because it's the technology together with the poetry that makes it so special and stand out, and you get right away where it's without the words, without anything written or any sound. It's you just get what it's about, and that's amazing and really, really, really beautiful and touching.
Thank you.
So it's a reaction. Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more about the technology that you used for this film?
And I think also this is also what I was saying about how the previous version didn't have heart. I don't think we would have had chicken skin.
Yeah, chicken skin. She's now going to use that word from now on.
And I think that also the sound aspect and the intentionally not having words was also important, because the work is about sort of literature, and so I think the sort of silences and sort of the poetic, I think, aspect of it was really, I think, what I felt was missing previously, and what I think we managed to achieve right now. So I mean, the film work, similar, I think, to the two before Shadows of Rememory. So they start really as these cardboard cutouts. So I started working from the large scale to more like diorama format, so almost like mock-ups. So I then started to think about, like I said, children's books, or cardboard cutouts, or pop-up books, actually, pop-up books. And so I made these cardboard cutouts much smaller, and put them in like these boxes that are then lit, and almost referencing like shadow play and shadow theater. And so that's normally the first phase of making these films. So they start really as like these sort of static cutouts in these shadow boxes, and then it gets more into the sort of more technological version. So this is unlike the previous films, which were literally stop frame animation. So moving the cutout like one, and then documenting that, and then and then putting that together digitally. So this is not stop frame animation. So it's fully a digital process with the studio.
Yeah. Until now, we're all shorts. Where is it leading to?
The work or me?
Or no, yeah, also you, because I see you're still like evolving a lot in the video medium. Also the more well, not on screen, but more the physical objects are also evolving. Where it's all going? Where is it leading you to? What would be your dream project?
I mean, so I just had a show last year, which was something that I'd sort of been wanting to do. So I had it in Switzerland in Vevey, which was something that I'd been wanting to do, I think, since about 2017. So so I really wanted to automate these cardboard cutouts, and so
So that
really
what you're doing on movie was what happening
Exactly.
like in real life.
Exactly. So that's really the direction that I'm seeing it. I mean, I'm really seeing a more sort of kinetic art. So these cardboard cutouts are sort of opening up like pop-up books, and and so you almost are watching like a theater piece, but fully with these cardboard cutouts.
Yeah, so it would be more of a live experience. When can we expect that?
I don't know.
I think you have to come back again, right?
No, I think the year is an exciting year. So the show at FOAM is an exciting moment for me, because I think it's also coming in a time where I feel like I've also been able to really understand or sort of understand the threads in my practice that I've been making over the last sort of with the different bodies of work over the last sort of few years. And so it sort of becomes the first survey exhibition in Europe. So that's great for me. So it's an exciting moment, and also to have it at the same time as the Ernest Cole exhibition, which is sort of by chance, but which is really special.
Yeah, and inspired you also in your work. Yeah.
And the upcoming shows, I think, for the rest of the year, if anyone is sort of traveling, we can be communicated. But there's great exhibitions that I'm doing this year that I'm excited about, that we've been conceptualizing for at least the last sort of 3 years. So it's a big year, it's an exciting year. And so I think anything that sort of comes after this, I don't know, but it's an exciting year.
Oh, we give it to the universe. Anyone else for some closing questions? Please do, because if you're not coming to the opening and not able to get a spot at the artist talk, this is your chance. Yeah. Yes. I knew that would pull you over. Hey there, what is your name and what is your question?
Hi, my name is Basha, and my question for you is, what is your advice for young storytellers?
I probably would have, if you'd said, what's your advice for young artists, it might have been easier to answer. Because I think that's
well, maybe start with that advice then first, and then we work away to the storytellers.
No, it's just that you also made me sort of challenge me a bit. So so I think it takes a while to find how you want to do things. And I think we were having this conversation now during dinner, to say that for me it's been important to work as an independent artist. It's been important for me to really work at like a slow pace that is outside of the commercial aspect of being an artist. And I'm really glad that I think I sort of paced myself in that way, to not make work for commercial purposes. And I think a lot of artists, unfortunately, sort of fall in that trap and end up making the same work, I think, for forever, because it makes money and it works. And so I change it. And so it's really been important for me to tell stories. And I think that maybe that's also why sort of rejecting working in that way, which could have possibly, I think, yielded great fruits financially, quickly. And so I'm really grateful. I think moments like this and like a year like this, in retrospect, makes me feel like I made really a good decision to go the other way and to not just sign too early, make the work that's working, but to really, I think the reason I was able to create all of these sort of different bodies of work as I, just to also work with heart, to work with intuition, all of those things, was because I sort of rejected that path. And I mean, it could have also gone really wrong, and I would have regretted sort of the decisions of not signing.
We would have had another conversation today. Or not.
But also I think that it does, I think again, then you also have to have so much discipline in terms of really, sort of having a team, having, all the different supports, which then means you have to pay for that, all of those things. So there's many decisions that if you go the other way, that you also need to make in order to sustain the practice and in order to really be able to create the work that you want to create. And so, it goes from proposal writing, it goes all of those other things. Luckily for me also, commissions have also allowed for me to do my sort of dream projects. So I would advise young artists to not rush going or tapping into the sort of commercial side, but rather really, just, tell your story, find ways to tell your story, find ways to still sustain your practice. And it can be through sort of proposal writings and all of those other ways that can still allow you to create work without just making work because it pays the bills.
I think that also applies for storytellers actually in general, if you just replace the word artist. Yeah. So thank you for that. The conversation during dinner you were referring to, we talked a little bit about mentorship. Mm-hmm. You just actually gave a really nice advice to people that might be younger than you. What good advice did you get that you're like still practicing daily?
So I've had different mentors. I really believe in mentorship. And I think it's sort of, I'm not sure about here, but I mean, it's something that is coming up more and more within the visual art space in South Africa. But, I genuinely believe in it. I think that having people that are like extremely academic, like that I sort of think through my work with, and then having like a mentor that's like, so one of my earliest mentors, Mary Sebande, who's a sculptor. She's extremely technical and, sort of has like a real sensibility around material. And so she, in terms of when I started to work with the cardboard cutouts, was really, I think she really helped me sort of think through photography and think through sort of the sense of touch and, and with it, like looking at like a photograph, but also that sort of touch aspect of it. And so we really thought through this idea of me working with these cardboard cutouts together and resolving that. And so I've had, I think, many different mentors that I'm always sort of going back to and having different conversations with, or that are really challenging me. But also that so some of my mentors are also very much within the sort of commercial world. And so we sort of speak about their sort of different, what's really working in terms of being a sort of signed artist. And then I will challenge that because for me, I've always, it's not that I'm anti-institutions, it's not like that. But, so there's so much space, I think, for sort of debate. And that I think it's really been important for me, because also they're all so different. And and I'm mentoring Mutloki Nono, who is the first person that I'm mentoring right now.
Because how does that work? They come up to you and they ask, "Would you like to be my mentor?" Or is it more of an unofficial thing?
So
Do they know
tying
you're
back
mentoring
to-
now?
No, so actually tying it to this current moment, and that's why I think it's quite special, is that I was invited to be on the jury for the Ernest Cole Award last year, and Nono had previously asked me to be her mentor. And I'd said that I might not be available. I think because last year I was on the road also quite a bit, and so when I was invited to become the jury member for the Ernest Cole Award, and her application was there, and I mean, everyone on the jury, we were all really loving her work, and so she got the award. And she then insisted that now you have to mentor. And
You now officially acknowledge the greatness of my work, so now you have to.
Exactly. And so it's really, I think, so last year I sort of thanked all my mentors, and and sort of acknowledged the sort of year that I was having, but by giving thanks to them, and just saying that I think I want to extend on that, because I believe very much in what they've been able to offer me. And so Mutloki is the first person that I'm going on that journey with, and I'm really excited also that that she got this award, and that I'm having this exhibition alongside Ernest Cole. So it seems to have sort of come full circle.
Full circle, right? Yeah, great. Well, this is obviously one of your proudest moments. I really, really hope you enjoy the opening of the exhibition tomorrow a lot. Looking back at it, what was another proud moment in your career? What are you really proud of?
That's such a.
It's also an
difficult
evening of
question.
celebration, right?
Geez, it's such a difficult question. I think, honestly, I think last year being able to build the team that I've managed to build in terms of my studio, as something that I've really wanted to do. I mean, I've really admired people like, which I imagine most of us do, people like William Kentridge, who have like the sort of extensive practice that he does. And like a sort of real, like a studio practice that's, he's always taking it, slightly further. He's always like, and doing amazing projects. And so I've really imagined my way of working, I think, like that. I've really imagined that the way that I work, because it's not static, because it's, it's not just photographs, and I'm saying that also, not undermining photographers or traditional people that use traditional photography. But I've always imagined my work being, my practice being able to be like that. And so, I'm really proud of the studio team that I have. And I think the exhibitions, particularly this year, so it's a really special moment.
Yeah. Well, Lebohang, I'm so excited for all the things that are still there to come and that are coming your way. Congratulations for now with this exhibition and winning the Paul Huf Award. Enjoy it to the fullest. And for you, I want to hear the 4s, 5, 6, the 8s. I want to hear it to the level of a 10. A warm applause for Lebohang Kganye. Thank you so much. Yeah, come on, one more time, just for the 8s. Yeah. Okay. And with this applause, we're closing this episode of Fotokroniek. Thank you so much for that energy and those vibes. I could all hear the eights. You were all eights tonight. Just for now, okay, tomorrow, the opening, Saturday, there are still some spots for the artist tour if you like. The ticket is valid until the 18th of May, so you can still have time to visit the exhibition. This was a program of Pakhuis de Zwijger in collaboration with FOAM. You can check the website of Pakhuis de Zwijger for the full agenda. Also, the next episode of Fotokroniek. And, actually, the photographer in question for the next edition was actually already, you heard the voice of this photographer already, because that's Savalai Maria presenting her project Proud, and she can tell you already a lot about that. Are you joining us for drinks? Oh, yeah. So she will promote the talk, and that is on March 22. And lastly, if you want to support Pakhuis in continuing organizing events like this for free entrance, then you can become a friend of Pakhuis and support us with a small donation. So thank you, and I hope to see you next edition.